Hey, I'm Dr. Toby, physical therapist and health coach. Thank you for coming to check out the Rehab mobile channel. In this video, I want to help you out if you've recently had a total hip replacement. I want to teach you the very things you need to avoid in terms of what positions and precautions that your surgical team should have told you about, whether you're a nurse or your surgeon. These things are going to be really helpful and important. I want to break it down in a practical way to tell you what activities would put you in these positions and what things you need to be careful of. So let's get right into it. But before that, by the way, we are a company that helps you to stay healthy, pain-free, fit, and mobile. We're a physical therapy and wellness company. So all of our videos that we create on our channel are to help you, train you, and educate you for how you can stay healthy, pain-free, fit, and live your best life. So hit the subscribe button so you can stay connected to all the videos that we make. And all right, so a couple things that you want to know when it comes to getting a hip replacement. There are typically two main approaches that happen. And when I say approaches, these are the ways that the surgeon actually goes into the joint to replace the joint. There's technically about 3 approaches, but some of the more common ones that are really important for you to understand is there is an anterior approach and a posterior approach. The third approach is more so a posterior lateral approach for how they essentially cut into the hip and essentially replace that joint by taking out the old surfaces of the joint and putting a new one in there. So you know all of that information already, because if you're watching this video, you most likely have had a hip replacement, and maybe you have had a hip replacement before and you recently got another one. But this is going to be really helpful for people who are in that acute phase. And so your surgical team probably has maybe gone over this information, or maybe they didn't, they just gave you the handouts. But this is really important so that you do not disrupt the surgical site, not only where they cut you open, but also the joint itself, because putting too much stress on the actual joint while it's very new can cause it to be unstable and can actually affect the actual joint that they replace, and they'd have to go back in and fix it and all these other things. So what you want to know is which approach you actually have, how the surgeon actually went in is going to be really important. So let's assume that you had the anterior approach, meaning that they went in from the front and they cut you open from the front. And most likely you may or may not know from based on the surgical site. It's always good to confirm. You will have the scar or the incision in the area where they went in, but it's still important to confirm and to talk with your physician on which approach they actually did. So if you have the anterior approach, one of the things that you want to avoid is this extension position. Again, that's going to not only put more stress and torque on the joint itself inside, but it's also can disrupt the surgical incision. So this extension position, this external rotation where you're rotating your leg outward, you want to avoid those kind of positions, as well as adducting or abducting, moving your leg away from the center of your body. So now, why is this important? There are a couple of activities that we do throughout the day that could affect or cause you to move in that position. So one activity is sometimes people want to stretch or move that way. And again, if you're very acute in this surgical process, you probably may not be standing on your own. You may be using a walker or other kind of devices, but making sure that you are not overextending yourself. Some people, because of the discomfort when they're lying on their back on their bed, they may want to kick their leg off of their bed or things of that nature, but those are things that you want to avoid. So anything that's going to cause you to extend, move your leg out away from your body and rotating that hip, you want to avoid. So one of the common things, for example, is if you're getting out of a car. Depending on how you are seated in the car, whether you're in the driver's seat, passenger seat, or if you that also is going to depend obviously on which hip you had replaced. But let's assume that I had my hip replaced on the left side and I'm getting out, not of the driver's seat, but of the back seat. So one of the things that's really important is this motion early on is going to be something you want to avoid. So how do we get in and out of the car? Well, one of the things that you want to do is think about twisting your entire body to get your legs out of the car. Make sure the door is already open, and from there you can simply stand up. And that's if you have the anterior approach, because again, the same concept applies if, let's say, I'm moving into the car and I have a replacement on my right side. Well, I want to first make sure I actually put my bottom into the car, and instead of swinging my legs wide open just like this, what I want to do is twist my body. right? So the same thing applies when it comes to getting out of bed. Some people are gonna sit up out of bed, and what they're gonna do is maybe swing their legs around if you sleep on your back or something like that. But again, you wanna make sure that you're rotating your entire pelvis together so that you don't affect the surgical site. The second thing that you wanna keep in mind is in the scenario that you actually are had a different approach. So the other approach is more so where they go into a posterior or lateral. So that means that they went in from the rear, had to move those muscles, open that up. Now in this scenario, you want to avoid movements that cause you to flex beyond 90 degrees, meaning where this hip is coming up past that 90-degree period. You want to avoid movements like that, movements that bring your body across or your leg across this way. So with the other approach, we wanted to avoid going out. With this approach, we wanted to avoid coming in this position. So that's going to be really important in things where we're rotating our leg inside. So not only moving in, but rotating. So in this scenario, things that are daily activities that you want to be mindful of and be very careful of is things like, number one, crossing your leg, which you probably wouldn't be able to do, but anything of that nature, moving your leg like this, is something you want to, again, avoid in that early period. You also want to be careful when it comes to getting up out of a chair, because just moving in this position is also stretching out that surgical site and can cause some instability. So it's very important that you focus on sitting from elevated surfaces so that you don't have to get as much hip flexion, meaning I'm bending my hip and it's gonna affect that surgical site. But if I have a higher surface, I'll be sitting up higher. It takes less flexion for me to get up and not compromise that surgical site. So those are some basic things. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of some things to keep in mind. If you haven't gotten clear information and you're unsure, the best way to get that information is to talk to your surgical team that helped conduct the procedure. And if you have any questions, there's a button in our link in the description. Hit that button. It's talk to a PT first. We can give you some more specific guidance and help educate you on what to do and not to do in this whole process. So if you found this video helpful, please like it and leave in a comment. Let us know what you found most helpful. You can also share this with somebody who you know will benefit from it. Maybe somebody who is about to get a hip replacement soon, and they're wondering, well, I never heard about this. I didn't hear about it. This may be a good way for them to start a conversation with their surgical team to understand what approach that they're getting and to know what things they need to keep in mind, what activities they need to be careful of as they move out of that acute phase or early phase of the surgical process. So again, thanks for hitting the subscribe button, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.